The laughter started before Emma Carter even touched the bidding paddle. A skinny 13-year-old girl in worn-out boots and her late grandfather's oversized brown jacket standing alone in the middle of a crowded livestock auction in Texas. Men, twice her age, looked at each other and smirked. One whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Somebody lost their kid." Another laughed, "She probably thinks this is a petting zoo." But 30 minutes later, nobody in that barn was laughing anymore. Because the animal everyone called worthless was about to make one man stand to his feet in complete shock. Before we go further, if stories about being underestimated still mean something to you, real emotion, real struggle, real victories, then subscribe to right now and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Texas, Canada, Australia, maybe somewhere nobody expects. We read every comment. Now sit back, because this story stays with you. The air inside the auction barn smelled like hay, mud, diesel fuel, and cattle. It was early November 2019, cold enough that people kept their hands buried inside heavy jackets while steam rose from coffee cups across the seating rows. Farmers leaned against metal rails talking quietly about prices, weather, feed costs, and drought conditions. Most of them had been attending auctions longer than Emma Carter had been alive, and almost every person there believed they could spot a bad animal within seconds. Emma walked through the barn slowly with a small spiral notebook pressed against her chest. She didn't look nervous. She looked focused. The notebook belonged to her grandfather, Walter Carter, a cattleman who had spent 40 years raising Angus bulls on a small ranch outside Amarillo. Walter had died 8 months earlier after losing a long fight with cancer. Before he passed away, he left Emma 2 things, his notebook and $3,000 in savings with one instruction written on the first page. Learn to see what other people miss. Emma carried those words everywhere. Most kids her age spent weekends on phones or watching television. Emma spent hers inside cattle pens learning how animals moved, how they stood, how they breathed, and how small details revealed things most people ignored. Her grandfather had taught her that the best cattlemen didn't look at animals quickly. They looked carefully. Most people only see what's obvious, he used to tell her. Money is made by seeing what isn't. That morning, Emma came to the auction for one specific animal, pen number 14, a massive black Angus bull named Blackstone Ridge, 4 years old, nearly 2,000 pounds, strong bloodline, excellent genetics, and according to almost everyone at the auction, ruined. The bull limped badly on his rear leg. Rumors spread through the barn before bidding even started. Some said hip damage. Others said nerve problems. One man called him future hamburger meat. Buyers crossed his name off their catalogs before the auction even began. But Emma kept watching him quietly from outside the pen. She studied the way he shifted weight. She watched how he lowered his hoof. She crouched beside the fence writing notes into the notebook. One old rancher nearby laughed softly and said, "Kid thinks she's a veterinarian." More chuckles followed. Emma ignored every one of them. What the crowd didn't know was that Emma had already visited the ranch 2 weeks earlier with her Uncle Mason. She'd watched Blackstone Ridge walk across dirt, grass, and gravel. She noticed something everyone else missed. The limp wasn't permanent. It wasn't structural. It was pressure-related. A deep stone bruise trapped inside the hoof causing inflammation every time weight shifted. Painful? Yes. Permanent? Not. Even close. Her grandfather had taught her how to tell the difference years ago. The timing between steps, the angle of the leg, the way the bull carried tension through the shoulder instead of the hip. Emma knew one simple treatment and a few. Weeks of recovery could turn that worthless animal back into one of the most valuable breeding bulls in the county. And because nobody else saw it, she might actually be able to afford him. The auction began around 10 a.m. The first cattle sold quickly. Healthy cows, young calves, strong bulls. Prices climbed fast while the auctioneer's voice echoed through. the barn non-stop. Emma sat quietly near the back, holding bidder number 82. Some people still glanced at her and smiled like she was playing pretend. Then finally, nearly 2 hours later, Blackstone Ridge entered the ring. The mood changed instantly. Conversations stopped. A few buyers leaned back uninterested. Somebody joked, "Hope the trailer ride to the slaughterhouse ain't too rough on him." A few men laughed. The auctioneer tried to sound optimistic, but even he knew nobody expected much. "All right, folks, let's see what we got here. Who'll start me at $2,500? Silence. 2,000? Nothing. 1,500? A meat buyer near the front lifted his card lazily. 1,500, thank you. Need 16. Before anyone else moved, a calm young voice said, 16. Heads turned instantly. Emma Carter held her bidder number steady in the air. The laughter started again immediately, louder this time. One man actually shook his head, smiling. This ought to be interesting. The meat buyer looked annoyed now. He raised again. 17. Emma answered immediately. 18. Back and forth they went. 19, 20, 21. The crowd slowly stopped laughing. Because the girl never hesitated. She never looked nervous. She never looked toward her uncle for help. She just watched the bull carefully every single time he shifted his weight in the ring, like she already knew something nobody else did. The meat buyer finally stopped at $2,400. He wasn't going higher for a crippled bull. But Emma raised, her number one more time. 25. Silence filled the barn. Real silence this time. The auctioneer looked around slowly. 2,500 going once. Nobody moved. Going twice. Still nothing. Sold. Bidder 82. And just like that, the little girl everyone laughed at owned the bull. But the story should have ended there. It didn't. Because standing near the side rail that morning was a man named Caleb Dawson, one of the largest ranch owners in Texas, Millionaire cattle breeder, a man whose livestock appeared in magazines and championship competitions across the country. Caleb had watched the entire thing quietly without saying a word, and what caught his attention wasn't the bid. It was Emma herself, specifically the way she looked at the bull instead of the crowd. Most buyers react emotionally under pressure. Emma never did. She stayed calm, focused, certain. Caleb recognized that immediately because the best cattlemen in the world all shared one thing: patience. After the auction ended, he walked outside and found Emma helping her uncle load Blackstone Ridge into the trailer. "Why'd you buy him?" Caleb asked. Emma looked surprised but answered honestly. "Because he's not broken." Caleb crossed his arms. "Everybody in there thinks he is." Emma nodded once. "Everybody in there looked for 30 seconds. I looked for 2 weeks. Caleb stared at her for a moment, then smiled slightly. "What's wrong with the leg?" Emma explained the hoof bruise in detail. Calm, clear, confident, not trying to impress anyone. Just telling the truth. When she finished, Caleb looked toward the trailer and quietly said something her uncle never forgot. "That girl sees cattle the way old-school ranchers used to." 10 days later, the veterinarian confirmed everything Emma predicted. The hoof was treated, infection drained, pressure released. 3 weeks after that, Blackstone Ridge walked perfectly sound. Word spread fast through Texas ranch circles. The same men who laughed at Emma started talking about her at feed stores and sale barns. Then something even bigger happened. Caleb Dawson called her family personally and asked if he could come see the bull himself. He spent nearly an hour inspecting Blackstone Ridge before finally offering Emma $11,000 cash, right there beside the fence. Emma stood frozen. Her uncle nearly stopped breathing. Because the bull she bought for $2,500, the bull everyone mocked her for buying, had just changed her entire future. But what happened next shocked Caleb even more. Emma shook her head politely and said, "No, thank you, sir." Caleb blinked. "You're turning down $11,000? Emma nodded carefully. "My grandpa taught me good breeding bulls are worth more than one sale." For a second, Caleb Dawson just stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. "Your grandfather taught you right. Today, Emma Carter runs her own small cattle operation on leased land outside Amarillo. She still carries her grandfather's notebook everywhere she goes, and people who once laughed at her now call asking for advice before buying livestock. But years later, the part everyone still remembers most isn't the money, or the bull, or even the auction itself. It's the moment the laughter stopped. The moment a little girl stood in a room full of experienced men and trusted what she knew instead of what everybody else believed. Because sometimes the people who get laughed at first are the same people everyone listens to later. And sometimes the difference between failure and success is simply having the courage to see what other people refuse to notice.